Hi, this is Randy. I wanted to explain this second incident that was extremely odd and was an example of the narcissist bringing up something that happened 10 years prior that nothing was ever said about when it occurred. It was almost for the purpose of starting a fight, finding some reason to fight and to make me feel like a horrible person regarding something that may or may not have happened 10 years prior. So the narcissist returned from work with his son, and his son was probably 19 or 20 at that point. So 10 years prior, I guess his son had remembered something about me, or an incident that had happened when we were all camping together, me and the narcissist and his 4 kids and my 1 child, which we would do a lot. Now, the camping days, were very stressful for me, having to keep track of 5 kids and prepare meals for them and get all the food together ahead of time because we really didn't have that much money. We couldn't keep going out to eat from the campsite. We had to bring enough food to fill up, 5 kids, tons of pop, soda, it had to be rationed because they would just open cans of pop and just leave them sit and then open up another one and another one and another one. And, by the end of the evening around the campfire, I would just be like throwing out a bunch of cans of soda that had been just opened, and the cooler would be, empty when we had brought like cases of pop, because this is how his kids were. So it was really hard to manage food around them because they just ate whatever was in sight, and then always needed more, and didn't understand that there was limits to how much food there might be, especially when you're out on a camping trip. You can't really just easily run up to the store and buy more. So it needs to be, divided among the number of people that are there so people don't starve. So anyway, it was this hard task trying to manage food when you're out on a campsite with all these little kids who just always seem to be ravished. So I remember I would make a big thing of this pasta salad that the kids liked. Things that would fill people up and would last, and could be like a side dish to hot dogs, hamburgers, corn on the cob, submarine sandwiches, salami sandwiches, chips, pop, breakfast foods, all sorts of, things. It was, I thought it was totally adequate and, good food that kids liked. And that's what I made. So anyway, I was told by the narcissist that he was working with his son, and that his son recalled to him one of the camping trips, that after camping, when we were on our way home, that he said, I stopped at Subway and I got out and went into Subway, and I got my son a sub and came back into the car and gave my son a sub on our ride home, and I didn't buy subs for any of the other kids in the car, just for my son. And he told the narcissist this. Like, this is the golden child, too. So, anyway, the narcissist was angry now, 10 years later, because his 20-year-old son had just told him this story, the way that the son remembered it. And so the narcissist was shaming me. And basically, I mean, he was almost threatening to, it felt like he was threatening to leave me after hearing this story from his son and his son's version of it. It seemed like he was threatening to leave because he took it for 100% true the way his son remembered it as a little boy. And it also made me think that they must have been talking badly about me in order for his son to even bring this up during conversation when they're working. Like, how did they get onto the subject, I wondered, of, what we used to do 10 years ago camping, and then the son brings up this memory that he has. So I had no memory of this, and I racked my brains about trying to remember what happened. How could this happen? It doesn't sound like that's anything that I would do. I don't see how I would get away with it, do it at the time, and then how would I even get away with it with a bunch of kids in the car? And then, like, why wouldn't that have been called to my attention if I really did do that? Why wouldn't it have been called to my attention then, like when it was happening, instead of now, 10 years later? So I racked my brains, and then what I could gather from the incident is that my narcissist got drunk at the campsite. We had picked up all of our camping gear and, broke down our tents, and then went to the beach for a few hours before we drove home. And while we're at the beach, the narcissist got annihilated. And I think we ate, and the kids, it was at the end of the trip, so we probably ran out of food. And with those scavenger kids of his, I think what may have happened is that my son didn't get his portion of food, and because the other kids probably took his food. This is how I piece it together about something how it might have happened, if it did even happen. So the way I think what happened was the narcissist was drunk. His kids didn't share the food that was left and at the end of a trip. So my son, I think, got nothing. And my son was actually, this doesn't matter, but he was the type of kid that, like, would go without eating sometimes. And, a couple times one time at least, he fainted, or almost fainted on the baseball field because he hadn't eaten. Like, I had to kind of make sure that he would eat sometime, because he would be real active and he wouldn't eat. And so he didn't get food, and he needed to eat. And I think what happened was the narcissist was passed out in the car on our ride home. And I decided, that since he didn't eat, I better stop and get him a Subway, because there was no food. And of course, the narcissist is drunk and he's asleep. The other kids had eaten already. So if I went to Subway and just got my son a sub, I'm sure they probably still wanted subs anyway, even though if they had just eaten. They would want more subs because they were never ending, food eating machines. And if he was drunk, I wasn't going to pay for all those subs because I was sick of paying, and I didn't think it was fair for me to be paying all the time, and I didn't have a lot of money for his kids, especially because there were things that he would not buy his kids, and I wasn't about to buy his kids something that he wouldn't buy his own kids. So that would have been the case. He wouldn't have even bought those kids subs if he hadn't been passed out. Oh, this just gets so ugly just thinking about it. So I don't know if this even happened, but if it did happen like that, that's why it would have happened. It's the only thing that I could think of, that I would have stopped somewhere and got my son something to eat and not everybody else. And it wasn't brought up at the time, and how, if I would have ever gotten away with it, the narcissist would have had to been passed out drunk. And to me, if it happened that way, then it was fair because it was the only person who hadn't eaten. And what was I supposed to do? So anyway, this was something that was brought back up, and I was just made to feel so evil, so horrible, and made to feel this 10 years later for the first time. And it's astounding. Never ever experienced anything like that before, of an incident being brought up so much later after the fact, and then like distorted, and you can't even really remember what really happened, so you can't defend yourself. All right. Thanks for listening.